We're here for our live version of Southern Sports Gumbo. We're going to talk a little transfer portal quarterback, and then we're going to go through the this weekend's playoff games one more time. But over the last 5 to 7 days, we've had some interesting players that are very talented enter the transfer portal at the quarterback position that are going to start at some high level Power Four programs. So, Sweet City, let's start with former Buford quarterback that went to Nebraska. Granted, I think in high school, I don't think he played 2 years at any high school that he went to, and he did get 2 years at Nebraska. Let's talk about Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, okay. So Dylan Raiola, yeah, he's moved quite a bit in his from eighth grade to his to what's going to be his true junior year next year. For Nebraska, he completed over 72% of his passes this year. He has 2,000 yards in the air with 18 touchdowns and 6 picks. Rushing yards, not much, 29 yards on the ground. So he's not really a dual threat kid or somebody who's gonna scare a lot of people with his legs and stuff. He is mobile enough, however, that he can manipulate the pocket and move around and extend plays with his legs, even though he's not a Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels type of QB. I think that he's going to have a lot of suitors because he's got a great arm. He's an accurate passer, and it's going to be really interesting to see where he pops up. Along with him, there's Sam Levitt who has a Lisfranc injury. He'd probably be the top portal quarterback if not for the injury. He had a little over 1,600 yards this year with about 61% passing, 10 touchdowns, 3 TDs, and 306 yards on the ground rushing with 5 touchdowns. DJ Lagway from Florida just entered the portal recently. Completed 63% of his passes for a little over 2,200 yards, 16 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. So that not a great showing by young Mr. Lagway there. And lastly, Brendan Sorsby out of Cincinnati, another big name that a lot of teams are talking about. Sorsby completed just under 62% of his passes with 2,800 yards through the air, 27 TDs, and 5 picks. On the ground, he had 580 yards with 9 touchdowns too. So more of a dual threat kid, and he's able to get things done through the air and on the ground. Kev, what are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, so I guess if I were to place them in some sort of order, I guess I'll just kind of hit one at a time here and kind of maybe where I think they'll go. Rayola is, to me, probably the most talented of the group. I mean, some are going to say Lagway. I'll hit on him in a minute, but I honestly think Rayola is probably the most talented. I think if I was to pick one that I would want, if he was 100% healthy, as far as where he's at the current moment, his winning, his leadership would be Levitt. So I'll talk about those two first. Rail is interesting to me. Where is he going to end up? A team like Cincinnati that needs a quarterback. Every one of these guys is going to get mentioned for LSU because that starter position is open. And LSU is known to put talented players around a quarterback. So I think all these top guys will be people that will be players that LSU goes after. Another, a couple spots that Rayola might, consider is, you know, a place like Missouri that this year, they needed a quarterback, um, and they had, a quarterback, but he's a senior that transferred from Penn State that's going to graduate. So Missouri is going to be looking for one. Tennessee is another, school that will be looking for a quarterback. So I think Rayola is the type of guy that he could go to any of those places and do well and start. And you know, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, Cincinnati. Well, not Cincinnati, Indiana. Indiana.
Oregon,
Go ahead.
Oregon may be a possible landing spot if Dante Moore decides to declare for the draft too.
That's right.
Uh, they've
And
got a lot of money to spend, so if Moore
yep.
if Moore declares, they're going to be a big player for all of these guys. So
Yes, yes, and to that point, I think Rayola is going to be one because he does have 2 years of eligibility left. He's going to be one that is going to draw big money in the portal. So be interesting to see what schools are willing to break the bank to get him. The next quarterback, Sam Levitt, is the one that I just if it wasn't for the Liz Frank injury, he would be my number one guy, just on his leadership. He's won games, won a conference championship, played in the playoffs. His ability to run, pass both, and just everything with that he brings. And again, I think you can pencil him in as a candidate to go to any of these schools. To me, Levitt and Raiola, to me, are the top two most ready quarterbacks. Um, and again, if you have a system that is a little bit dual threat, like a Tennessee with that Bryles system, like what Kiffin wants to run at LSU, Levitt is the best candidate for that offense.
If he's totally healthy. That's
Yes.
a big if right there. I know that we've spoke offline and in the forums that we're a part of. There's a lot of talk about Levitt and that injury. If sans the injury, he's probably the number one quarterback with a bullet in the portal. But that being said, that's a big risk. Somebody's gonna spend a lot of money, and they may end up unhappy because if he doesn't recover and he's not able to play next year, that's he's probably going to command 2.5 million anyway. Somewhere
I think
in
so.
that range. And that's a lot of money to watch that kid play ball, or to not play ball for a whole season.
It is.
Now that being said, I guess he could probably get a medical red shirt and play in 27. But that's not what you're not paying him 2.5 million to play in 27. You're paying him that money to play in 26. So it's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of teams that are going to be relying on their doctors to get this diagnosis right, because that's a big risk there.
Yeah, and again, a diagnosis at this point, is not 100%. Again, when you compare Levitt and Raiola a little bit, Raiola is a better, from an accuracy standpoint. The thing that I like about Levitt is he's been able to protect the ball pretty well, not turn it over. Last year in 24, he threw 24 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. This year, before the injury, he was 10-3. His completion percentage is a little under Raiola's. He's more of a 60% guy, where again Raiola's high 60s, low 70s. And again, Levitt's more of a dual threat than Raiola. But like you said, Raiola is not a stiff in the pocket. He can move. It's just, will he buy in? Let's say Raiola would end up in a Tennessee offense or an LSU with Kiffin, would he buy into running the ball on occasion? And again, that's the unknown. From there, let's talk Lagway next. To me, this is the guy that is. I'm just curious. He drew a lot of money out of high school, and to me, he's the one that I like the least. We'll talk about Sorsby. I like Sorsby more than Lagway. I think Lagway regressed in his leadership this year. And it's kind of understood that Florida was ready for him to move on. 2 years, he's thrown 23 interceptions in 2 years.
That's a lot of interceptions.
A lot of interceptions that doesn't really protect the ball either year. 14 this year, and you got to remember that freshman year, he didn't start till like the 5th game of the season. So he was on a pace to throw just as many. 337 attempts this year, 14 interceptions, 192 attempts last year with 9. So he doesn't protect the ball. To me, he's not the best leader. They won 3 games this year, I believe.
Something
like yeah, if I'm a school, that's not the guy I want. It's going to be interesting. Maybe someone like Missouri gets him, and with the way that they balance a running game. Now that being said, he can run the ball, and he will run the ball some. So even though I'm not a fan of his, I would, if a coach like a Lane Kiffin wanted him, I would regress to that. And I say that because Lane Kiffin is one of the coaches to me that has earned the right. Whatever quarterback he puts on the field, you would have to trust in him as a coach. He made Blake Sims a running back, an effective quarterback. He made Philip Coker, national championship quarterback at Alabama. Those two. He took Chambliss this year and made him, developed him into a really, really good quarterback, and all SEC type quarterback. So if Kiffin were to go after Lagway, I would regress to that. But if I'm a school, this is one of the guys that I see as a potential. You're going to burn a lot of money with him. What's your thoughts on Lagway?
Yeah, I mean, his potential. If you're looking at his high school potential because he just hasn't shown it. He hasn't flashed in college like you expect him to, especially after 2 years. Um, I personally wouldn't want him as my quarterback. And if you did, I would not pay a ton for him. I would try to do something incentive based, and I don't know how much of that is out there in NIL and stuff like that. But I think it's something that will start. You'll start to hear more about that players having incentive based deals. As these numbers get crazier and crazier. So yeah, I'm not big on Lagway from the standpoint of going and spending. I wouldn't give him $1 million. I mean, that's a lot of money, but for a transfer portal quarterback, a top flight one, it really isn't. And I wouldn't pay that
Right.
much for him, honestly. Like I said, maybe give him 500,000 and then some incentives. He's got to play X amount of games. He's got to, you know, completions, interceptions, all that jazz, because he hasn't done anything to earn a big bite at the apple again going into his junior year. What do you think?
Yeah, he certainly has it. Again, like I said, he's the one I would be least interested in. I
I
think you
agree.
got to. He's your. I don't see him as a high ceiling guy, but I absolutely see him as a high risk guy, and he's not a high floor player either.
No, I
And
agree with
again,
that.
his leadership was to me very lacking this year. I think if Florida would have had a good number two, he would have got benched. That's just my
I,
opinion.
I think you're right. I think you're right. It got off the rail. It really in that LSU game when he had the 5 interceptions. It just went downhill from there. And I think in mid October, if they had a decent backup, they would have they'd have went to it. They just didn't have anybody to go to. So
Yep.
that takes us to Brendan Sorsby, quarterback from Cincinnati, 2,800 yards on the year, a little over 500 yards rushing. I want 27 touchdown passes to 5 interceptions. Obviously, can run with the ball. Can get the ball downfield. Fantastic quarterback. He's got another one who's going to command a lot. Some of the possible landing spots for him. Texas Tech is considered a front runner. They're going to need a quarterback. With Baron Morton's departure and Will Hammond having the ACL injury. So Sorsby's also a Texas native too. So
Yeah.
that's something to consider there as well. And I think I read that his girlfriend transferred there to play volleyball. So
That,
you
that
know
is
how that
correct.
goes. Indiana, another spot, not that far away from Cincinnati. Cignetti's shown what he can do with a quarterback. He's got a Heisman winner who's going out the door now. So he's shown that he can develop a quarterback, and his offense is one that can make a quarterback serviceable and make them a lot of money for going into the NFL. Other than that, LSU is obviously going to be another seeker. There are going to be plenty of teams who are after Sorsby. I think it's just a matter of him trying to decide what's most important. Does he want to try to win national title? Is he looking more for development, a combination of the things? Is he looking for the big payday now? A lot of variables there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mentioned Levitt is probably my favorite if he's healthy. And of course, we said he's not, which he isn't. So that would bring me to right now. Sorsby is probably my favorite uh, quarterback that is in the portal class. There's others that are going to enter, but he would probably be my favorite. And again, a guy that is a true dual threat quarterback that can run and pass, protects the ball pretty well. 27 touchdowns this year, 5 interceptions. Last 2 years, he's been over 60% as a passer. This year, 61.6. Last year, 64. Pretty consistent, 2,800 yards, 8.3 average this year per attempt. And to me, that's a good number. A little over 7 last year. And he's got a little better, each year. So I really like Sorsby. You mentioned that Tech is a favorite, and Tech has spent a lot of money in the portal, and they will go out and spend it. So I think they're definitely a contender, but there's going to be other schools that are going to throw money at him. Definitely, look, girlfriends, depending upon what level, they tend to be undefeated. But that being said, if he gets enough money from another school, the girlfriend can transfer and play volleyball at that school too.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to be done. But again, it wouldn't surprise me. I know that LSU is going to go after him. It would not surprise me at all if Kiffin is able to pull him in. He is the type of quarterback that Kiffin would like.
So let's just for the heck of it, let's you and I just rank these four quarterbacks on. Let's rank them on if we were coaching a college football team, who we would take in order. Money not being an object. Go ahead.
Sorsby would be one. Who would be one for you?
With Levitt not being 100%, we're not sure on that. Sorsby would certainly be my number one as well.
I would go. I would go ahead. Go ahead. Go to your number two.
I was going to say I would probably go Levitt next, though. I would probably go Levitt next because I think that he, his talent is is undeniable. Had a great year last year, leading Arizona State to the playoff. Got injured this year, but I think that he certainly is one that that if he's at 80-90%, he's going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country.
This one is really hard for me at number two. Levitt is who I would like it to be. Again, I would just want to see where he's at as far as his recovery. I would probably say Levitt too, but it's close to me. And who I'm going to go with three, and who you probably go with at three, the same. And we've had ups and downs as far as emotions on this guy, or opinions, I guess is the right thing to say on this guy. I think overall you've been a little higher on him than I have. That being said, you cannot doubt his arm talent. His arm talent and his pocket presence is as good as it gets. Again, to me, he in the clutch moments, he's not had a lot of big clutch moments, but that's Raiola. And again, if I look at a high ceiling guy, Raiola's he's got a very high ceiling. If you put him with a good quarterbacks coach, like a Kiffin, like a Sark. Granted, Texas isn't going to be looking for a quarterback, but if you put Raiola with an outstanding offensive coordinator or quarterback coach, I would like to see that. How high could he elevate his game to? Because again, arm talent, he's up there with the best of them. His accuracy is really good, and his pocket presence also is really good. So, what's your thoughts?
I agree. He's my number three, no doubt. Like he's not a dual threat kid, but he's got an NFL arm. He's got NFL accuracy. It's just what we talked about. Rail was kind of a hot point on the broadcast here throughout the season because as our buddy DMAC like to say, he's never had that big moment. I agree with that. And some of that is that in my opinion, Nebraska doesn't have a lot of big moment opportunities as well. I think that if he gets into the right, you're looking at an Oregon. If Moore leaves, LSU will probably be a suitor depending on how things go with Levitt and or Sorsby. And LSU probably needs to get 2 portal quarterbacks, to be honest, maybe even 3. I don't know, how many big time if you're going to get 2 big time kids that are going to come in and be willing to compete with each other. But that ideally, that's what's going to happen. Texas Tech is another one. Miami with Carson Beck being on the way out. That's another possible suitor as well. So there are a lot of teams that could use Rail. Louisville, Jeff Brom with Miller Moss being done there. That's another one, and Brom can develop. He can develop QBs. So there's another landing spot for these quarterbacks, possibly looking to be developed to go to the NFL.
So that would put us both with Lagway fourth. I don't know that we necessarily need to discuss him much more. We kind of already have. We both don't have a lot of confidence in his leadership and stuff. But you mentioned, some other schools in there, which there's another three guys here that we could kind of throw out there that have not announced for the portal. There's some freshmen that we can mention too, but there's three guys that are, played that have not announced for the portal and are likely to go into the portal. One, C.J. Bailey, the North Carolina State quarterback that is from Miami, that Miami has a lot of interest in. And again, LSU will too. True dual threat guy, high upside at North Carolina State's been good. Damon Williams out of Washington, dual threat guy, had a really good bowl game the other night. He's another quarterback that a lot of people expect to enter the portal. And let me see.
Kevin Minchie was a 4-star kid who was at Notre Dame who got beat out by Steve Carr. That's another kid that that's a talented kid who who could flash given the opportunity.
Yep,
I'm sure that he'll end up at a solid program. He's that good.
We absolutely, and again, he's one that again, you could take if you take one of the bigger name guys and you bring him in too to compete, and who knows, he might end up being the number one guy. Much like a Chambliss at Ole Miss. Devin Dampier was the third guy I was going to mention that's at Utah. He's another one that a lot of people are interested in that could enter the portal from that. Then a couple freshmen you mentioned. We could mention. You mentioned Minchie. Julian St. Clair from Ohio State, who was the second-rated quarterback in the class last year. And he's not, in the top two on their depth chart. And obviously Julian St. will be back. So I think it goes without being said that once the playoffs are over, St. Clair will be in that portal somewhere. Julian Lewis is another one that we both have, watched over the years, is another one that I could see entering the portal. From Colorado. They may hold on to him, but I think he will perk up and be interested. I do think the Indiana connection with that offensive coordinator, if they were to push to get him, would play a big role there. That's a couple other ones, your thoughts on any of those other guys?
No, I agree with everything you said, and Julian's a very interesting possibility there with, in October, in late October, I would have put, I would have said there's probably at least an 80% chance that he was going to get out of Colorado, but he got in towards the end of the year and he played well, showed that that he can lead a team. That being said, he was big on Indiana from the beginning, and he saw something that a lot of people didn't, because people were like, why is why is the number one quarterback in America looking at Indiana? Well, you see why. They're the number one team in the country now. So he knew what they had cooking up there. That being said, does he give that a shot? I don't know. I'm sure, money will have something to do with it, as it constantly does. But that's another kid that, certainly if he does decide to go somewhere else, he will more than likely be a starter next year. And I look for big things from him.
I agree. I think he will be a starter and play well next year for sure. Aaron Philo's another Atlanta area player that's been at Georgia Tech. He's had moments where he's played. Again, close to a 60% completion guy that's had about 900 yards. Shown the ability to throw the ball well, and there's a lot of rumors that he's going to go to Florida. Again, kind of like Minchie, probably not a day one starter unless he beats someone out. But again, he's a guy that flashes potential that could go somewhere and win the job. improve in that kind of stuff. So, any thoughts on Aaron Philo?
Yeah, he's another kid who, yeah, there are a lot of these kids that just need an opportunity. There are a lot of talented quarterbacks in America. I look at Joe Burrow. Okay, Joe Burrow
Yep.
was at Ohio State for 3 years, and would have been there 4 or 5 and never had the opportunity. Transfers to LSU, has a pretty solid junior year, redshirt junior year, comes back and has the most amazing quarterback season everybody's ever seen as a senior. A lot of those kids are out there that they just need an opportunity. So I'm looking forward to a lot of these guys and where they end up and if they're able to take advantage of the opportunity or not.
And so just sitting there talking, we named four, three, and then a couple of freshmen. If you count Minchie, Philo, I think we went through about 10, 11 quarterbacks, and that's just scratching the surface. There's going to be more. We're going to probably see another, you know, probably that many more, another 10 or 11 that end up in the portal. So it's going to be very interesting. And again, I think you'll see teams that will go out there and go after a couple quarterbacks.
Yeah, I certainly think so. And like you say, there are so many of these kids that have they have plenty of a lot of talent. They just need a shot. And these kids, they get in a situation. You get in a situation where you're backing up a Julian Sayin, who's a sophomore that was just at the Heisman ceremony. Well, if you're his age, or you're not going to wait on him. You know what I mean? I mean, so there's some
Kids today won't.
there are some talented kids out there who need an opportunity, and they'll get them next year. I think it's just a matter of matching yourself up with the right coach and the right scheme to be able to elevate your game. I mean, if I was a transfer quarterback who fancied myself as a passing quarterback, I most certainly would want to go to a school where they could develop me, but B, that they have the players that I can go and show how good I can be. Because if I'm dropping dimes on receivers and they can't catch the ball, then it doesn't make me look that good, regardless. So there are a lot of different variables here that these kids are looking at, and I think those are the two biggest. Is one, coaching and development, and then two, what am I surrounded by, and are these guys going to help me elevate my game, and am I going to help elevate their games as well? That's what I'd be looking for.
Yep. And there's a lot of teams out there that are going to offer those type of things. And we mentioned schools that are definitely going to be looking for quarterbacks: Florida, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, Indiana, Texas Tech, potential of Alabama. Granted, they've got a good freshman quarterback, so they may not be in it as much looking. And I say Simpson could even come back. Teams again like UCLA, and that Louisville. There's a lot of teams, Georgia Tech, to replace Haynes King if Marcel Reed comes out. There's going to be there's a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be on the market, and certainly a lot of schools that are going to need quarterbacks. That's for sure. Um,
Yeah, I mean, so Nico's I guess he's a redshirt sophomore, so he's draft eligible, right?
he
I can't
is, Lord.
I can't see him going into the draft. I don't think that he's done enough that he would. He if he went to the draft today, he'd probably be a day 3 pick. Not based on what he's done, but just based on talent alone, because he hasn't done enough, in my opinion, uh, to match the hype that he was given.
Yeah, I really don't see him any more than a free agent. I guess someone could pick him in a third round, but man, again, you talk about just the leadership
Well, I
opportunity.
don't
I
think
mean,
he's going to the third round. No way. I think a
well,
day
third
three.
day. I mean,
Yeah,
I think he's a free agent.
yeah. You're
He's
probably right. Probably
to
right.
me, he's almost toxic. Another. I'll throw one more quarterback out here. Just based on he had a great year this year. Now, granted, he was at a smaller school, a non-power four, but he had a really good year with a really good quarterback coach, and that's Drew Mestamaker from North Texas. Um, threw for a lot of yards, averaged, a lot of yards per throw, and there's going to be guys that are going to come after him. Obviously, so his coach went to Oklahoma State. Obviously, they're going to be after him. Um, but there will be other schools that will come after Drew Mastermaker too, depending upon where these top guys end up and where things fall.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of these, a lot of these kids will follow their coaches. I mean, if a Dillingham ends up at a Michigan, I can certainly see, Levitt following him there. Now, if he does, that's kind of a, this. I brought up Michigan specifically because of Bryce Underwood. If Dillingham goes there, does he take Levitt with him because he knows he's got a guy that he can trust and he's got to a playoff with him, or does he, does he go all in on the true sophomore wonder kid who everybody is waiting to take over the world? That'd be really interesting to me. And if he did go there and he did bring Levitt with him, I would think that Underwood would immediately hit the portal. I couldn't see Underwood and Levitt having a quarterback battle per se. If Levitt went to Michigan, I think if he went there, he'd be going there to start. He wouldn't be going there to compete for a position, regardless of how it was put out for general consumption. And if that did happen, that would put another uber talented quarterback in the portal, and there's never going to be any shortages of quarterbacks, looking for places to go. And there will never be a shortage of places looking for quarterbacks to come play for. So it's just matching them up. You got to get in the right system. And, these talented kids like the ones we're mentioning are all going to have the opportunity to go to a place that fits them a little better to prepare for the NFL.
Yep. Yep. And, and you bring out Underwood. There's nobody's dad that played the system better last year behind the scenes than Underwood's dad. Just as from a financial standpoint, going to Michigan, getting a $12 million deal, and that was over a 4-year period. So how much of that is he getting up front? I don't know. How much of that is he got to stay for? I don't know. But his dad played it pretty well, and I only say that to say this. Michigan didn't necessarily develop a lot with him this year, and their wide receivers are not very good. So it would not surprise me if the dad's not, flirting behind the scenes. You mentioned Oregon earlier. They're a school that I could see really coming after him and throwing a bunch of money if Moore goes out. Again, I would put the first three that we mentioned over Underwood because to me, he's not shown it yet.
I would as well.
But somebody would give him a lot of money, no
Yeah.
question.
Oh no, if that kid, if that kid wants another bite at the apple, and I don't know about, like you had said, I don't know about the buyout and how much he has to get, or any of that jazz. So I'm not even going to get into that. I would just say if he wants another bite at the apple, that's a kid that will command 2.5, 3 million immediately, and perhaps more. We've heard some numbers. We both saw recently where they said Nussmeier made $4 million for last year. I didn't hear that prior to very recent, so I don't know how much truth there is to that. But $4 million for a college quarterback is insanity. And I mean, that's a hindsight number. Joe Burrow was worth $4 million in 2019 in hindsight. Trevor Lawrence his freshman year, hindsight. But giving a kid $4 million up front for college football, Lordy. Mm-mm.
And that $4 million number also too. We've talked about this, and I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know how it hasn't happened. I'll say that. But I don't know if it will happen. To me, if you're a school and you're gonna pay a kid that kind of money to play, and I guess I shouldn't say kid because these guys are adults. They're making adult decisions. They're making major adult money.
Yep.
But if you're going to give them that kind of money to play, and then all of a sudden it gets to 7, 8 games into the season, and they decide, I'm done. They gotta. Schools need to be better with these contracts.
Yeah.
If you don't play in 10 games or X amount of games, then you end up with 70% of that money. We're giving you this much up front. If you get injured, and you deem it through playing, okay, you want to pay them. But some of these guys are opting out. I mean, we can all say what we want to, but, I know Nuss had injuries earlier in the season, but when it got to the end of the season, he made a decision once he got pulled, he was done. He was not going to play it, back and forth. You know, he was not going to be there for LSU to be the second guy in that position, come in and lead us from behind to win. He made a decision that, hey, if I'm not going to be the starter, I'm done for the year. And everybody can say what they want, but that's what he did. And so if you're going to schools, if they're going to pay someone $4 million, to me, they got to get that full amount. They got to get the games out of them, or there has to be a legitimate injury that kept that guy from playing.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like with these coaches and the insane contracts they get that, where you got Scott Woodward giving away the farm, guaranteeing 100 million to people and stuff like that. I just, I just wish there was a way to make all of them, the players and the coaches, all more incentive based. I listen, make all you want. I mean, because listen, if LSU won a championship in 2026, Lane Kiffin would be worth $20 million for that trip. You give him $20 million because the money that LSU would make off of that would be tenfold. So that wouldn't be it. But that's a hindsight number, and that's why incentivizing these guys makes a lot of sense to me. But the problem is that you got these agents who want their money now, and you've got these kids who want their money now. And so it's kind of, and they know that if you don't give to them, more than likely somebody else will. And so it's, they just, we've opened Pandora's box, and I don't know how you fix it, but something's got to change because I don't think you can keep going back to the well of asking schools to have 30 and $40 million payrolls for their college football teams literally every year. I mean, it's too much.
I fully agree. And again, I'm 100% behind the incentive based contracts. And like, you said, and I think we both agreed on this, I'm for the open market. They can make as much as they want. At the end of the day, though, um, this they're getting big money, guaranteed money, and it's coaches, players, it's all of it. And it's to your point too. It's if this was a financial market, we would say there's a bubble, and at some point, some of those teams' bubbles are going to pop, and
Yes, soon.
soon, yes. And so I don't know. Um, I thought, and again, this is getting down a whole other path. We'll get into the playoffs. I thought they would have some things in place by now. The NCAA is, though, it's like a legal system. They move very, very slow, and they really don't tend to get anything fixed. I feel like they need a commissioner. That's a whole nother story. That's maybe the next show. Maybe we can talk about that and who that commissioner should be. I think we could all probably agree on that. It needs to be somebody though that is a fully focused person that can get things done, and that you give him some attorneys to help him write what needs to happen, and he gets in there and gets it done. They college football needs that.
I totally agree.
All right, so from there, let's get into the playoffs. Let's talk the playoffs one more time, and let's start with Friday night's game. Maybe the best game. Friday night and Saturday morning are your two best games. But let's talk about Friday night's game. Alabama, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's won 2 in a row over Alabama. One thing I read today that I did not realize, I should have from 2011, but Alabama has not lost to the same team in the same season since 1893. And Oklahoma has a chance to beat them twice in 2025. So, what's your thoughts on Oklahoma, Alabama one more time?
Um, like I said, like we talked about the other night, I think that said immediately when you just say Alabama versus Oklahoma, I think Alabama's going to win the game. Alabama's won 7 national championships since Oklahoma's last one. The Saban just left, 2 years ago. They're still there. Oklahoma beat Alabama this year. They beat them at home. They beat them. Low scoring game. Mateer not 100%. He's Mateer is going to be healthy for this game as he's probably been all year. So again, I'm sitting here on Tuesday, and while why I just automatically think Alabama, something in the back of my head keeps telling me Oklahoma's gonna beat Alabama again. So I'm gonna go with Oklahoma. Still, I think it's going to be a very tight game, low scoring. Oklahoma's front seven is hell. Ty Simpson hasn't looked that good. And Alabama came off a stinker of an effort against a solid defense in Georgia, rushing for -3 yards, 209 total yards on offense. And Oklahoma's defense is like I said, I like them as much as I like Georgia's defense. I don't see how Alabama scores enough points to win this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just not confident on Simpson. Uh, he's not. The Auburn game, he had a good game. That's the only game to me the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season that he played really well in. Played well against Tennessee, but that was in October. Once you get to November, to me, he didn't play that well. And against Georgia in the championship, he was really was not that good. Some interesting things that I want to see though in this game as it gets closer to it. Um, our Mason Thomas for Homa, is he going to play? They put some things out yesterday that led me to believe that he is probably going to play. I think he is huge in this game. He didn't play in the first one, but if he played in this one, I think it would be huge. Alabama's offensive line has not been good with the run blocking this year, and there's been times they've been suspect with the pass blocking, especially right tackle. There's been times that's almost been like a turnstile on the right side. And left tackle, even though he's an experienced guy, he's had moments where he's not been the lead either. So if R. Mason Thomas plays in this game, I definitely like Oklahoma to win. I think it's a low scoring game. We've talked about it. I think the field goal kicker plays a big role in this. Um, so I like Sindall there with Oklahoma, and I just like Oklahoma is where their defense is played in the second part of the season. They produced a lot of turnovers in the second part of the season, where Alabama was +7 at the halfway mark and just ended up +8. So they were about even in that back half of the season. So I like that. And then one other intangible thing that I don't like for Alabama is LT Overton. They talk about he is not likely to play in this game. And to me, he is their most disruptive lineman. Yanzi Pierre has had a good season, but and again, if you cannot look at Overton's sacks and just judging based on that. To me, you have to look at Overton's pressures. He gets a high number of pressures, and not just in the passing game. His ability to penetrate on the line of scrimmage, reset the line of scrimmage defensively has been effective in the running game too for other teams. So I think if Overton's out this game, I think that is a big loss for Alabama because they don't have a lot of playmakers on their defensive line. To me, it's him and Yanzi Pierre it, and the rest of their guys, even though they're like Tim Keenan and James Smith, those guys are solid. They're good physical players. They're not disruptive. And again, front seven wise, Dante Lawson's a good player, but he's not disrupted. Justin Jefferson's a speed linebacker. So again, playmaker wise, without Overton, I really think that helps Oklahoma. So and then also too, not a lot of being said right now. Josh Cuevas, the tight end, has been a big part of Alabama's offense. If he doesn't play, again, I think that takes them down a notch. So, and he's not played the last 3 or 4 games. So, R. Mason Thomas, Overton, Josh Cuevas, I want to see what those guys are going to do. But right now, even though Bama does not lose to teams very often, twice in a row, back to back, I'm going to say Oklahoma's going to get the third win in a row. And last November was the first one of those. So basically, 3 wins in a 13-month period is what I'm going to pick Oklahoma to do. From there, that takes us to Saturday morning. Well, the noon game, if you live on the East Coast, 11 if you live in Central Time. Miami, Texas A&M. What's your thoughts on this one?
So we've talked all year about the ups and downs of Miami, especially Carson Beck. When he was hitting on all cylinders early in the year, September, early October, Miami were world beaters, looked like the best team in the nation. Then he took a step back. Conversely, Miami's team took a step back, lost a couple games now, but now all bets are off. They're in the playoffs now. They're 0-0, and they've got a chance to do something here. As I'm looking at the stats, I'm looking at Beck. He's thrown for 3,072 yards with 25 touchdowns and 10 picks. We harped on his picks. It seemed like he threw a lot more interceptions. Perhaps it was just the timing of them or who he was playing against. But because the reason I mentioned that is because I'm looking at Marcel Reed's stats. He's thrown for 140 less yards than Beck, but has the exact same number of touchdowns and the exact same number of interceptions. And we don't look at Reed and his throwing the ball, and I don't recall us saying, "Oh, his passing killed him," or he's got to stop throwing the interception. So it's funny how you can look at almost the identical stats and the perception that we've had all year of the quarterbacks are two different perceptions. We've deemed Beck as somebody who's going backwards and regressed, and we've Marcel Reed with the same numbers. We had him in the Heisman conversation. A lot of that was because he could run the ball, but still, those numbers don't totally tell the story. I like I said, Texas A&M has been solid all year, but they're still Texas A&M to me, and until they can prove otherwise, I just can't pick them in a big game like this. So I'm gonna take Miami still. I think Miami will go in there. I think Beck. If he can throw for 250 plus and 2 touchdowns, maybe 1 interception, if they can get Pringle unloaded, turn Bain loose on defense, I think Miami wins the game still. I know you're you think A&M is going to win. Just what are your thoughts on it?
Well, let me say I first agree with you that there's teams that I like, some of it is like where these teams are located. Like, okay, let's say College Station. What is going on in College Station besides Texas A&M? And that is nothing. So I think some things that hurt like a Texas A&M school, like you say, they get in a big game moment, and it doesn't matter the sport. They never fulfill it at that moment. They never rise to that moment and excel. I think it's really hard and a challenge when you're in a smaller town environment like that, when you've got so much noise around you at this moment, talking about how big a deal this is, how great it is, how great you are as a player. Saban calls it rat poison, whatever you want to call it. It's very hard for them to be able to balance that moment. A lot of schools, that are in decent sized cities, a mid sized metropolis, there's enough going on around them that there's just other things. I mean, right now in College Station, this is it. Everybody's every day, every moment of every day, this is it. So, to your point, I do worry about their ability to handle the moment. So I will say that. Miami, some strengths for Miami that definitely are going to impact this game. Their defensive line led tackles for losses from a defensive line this year out of all college. Their defense went from 64 to 24, and they had a good number of sacks this year. So so that defense is what it is. They're really good. The matchup, though, Texas A&M's offensive line, in my opinion, was the best offensive line in the SEC, and so I do think A&M's front will be able to balance a little bit of Miami's defensive line. I think Miami's defensive line is elite, but I think A&M's offensive line will not get just blown up. I think they will manage the game and give them opportunity. Some things I like about Texas A&M's defense though is number one in third down conversion stops defensively. 22% is what they held teams to on third down. They were really good at getting teams in third and long and stopping them. The secondaries, I think, play a big role in this. I don't like Miami's secondary when you match them against Concepcion and Craven. We've talked about it. Um, games that we see in person, Mansour Delane could match up against any wide receiver and shut him down this year and did. The only the only number one wide receiver that was effective against LSU was Casey Concepcion. Some of that was they moved him around a lot. They put him from the slot to the outside. That being said, they're going to do the same thing in this game. They're really going to scheme in. And I think, another interesting intangible in this, Colin Klein is the next head coach at Kansas State. I'm sure he's going to want to be bought into this game in this moment. Is he putting energy, though, to building that roster at Kansas State? Or is he totally set that to the side and he is like 100% dialed in? Because that's what it'll take. He's been very good as an offensive coordinator. We predicted him to be a head coach. But it's tough when you get in this moment and you're battling trying because he's going to need players at K-State. He's going to need portal players. So, where's he at? So those intangibles, I would have to say, handling the moment, the offensive coordinator's leaving for a bigger job. The intangibles, I would say, favor Miami in this game.
Yeah,
the advantages. Go ahead.
Speaking of, I don't see how. I just think it'd be impossible for a coach to, and it happens every year. Every year you've got these situations where coordinators take other jobs, and many times they stay with that team. It happens a lot in the NFL as well, But I just don't see how it's possible for you to completely focus on, it's be where your feet are. You've just taken a job in Manhattan, Kansas, and you're going to run that program. I don't see how he can be 100%, focused on what's going on in College Station right now. And I think it'll have an effect on him. I really do.
It certainly could. Some things I like. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Some things I like intangible wise for A&M. Obviously, it's a home field for them, 102,000, and their fans will be jacked up. It's the biggest moment they've had in college football, and maybe ever since the '60s and that kind of stuff. They had some good teams in the '80s and won the Southwest Conference, but they've never been this, with the ability to go into the playoffs and win a national championship. They're fighting this late in the season since way back. So crowd there. Sacks, they're tied first nationally with 41 sacks. They've been really good and very disruptive there. And again, you mentioned Beck, and while Beck doesn't have a lot of interceptions, it seems like he's got them against good teams in big moments when they really needed him. So I do think the pass rush for A&M will get after Miami and Beck. And I would say I expect Miami. I would expect A&M to win this turnover margin. And I think they need to. But, you mentioned Reed. Reed is capable of turning the ball over. I do like Reed's ability to run, though, when they need to. And at this point in the season, it's going to be, in his mind, he's going to play a little more wide open. I'm going to take the yards. I'm going to run the ball because you lose, your season's done from that. So,
talking about that though, and I was going to shout out to our boy DMAC, who's not able to make it tonight. But what's DMAC's favorite stat? Turnover margin. Miami +9, Texas A&M -7. That's a big gap there. Big gap there.
It is.
And, it is. If that ends up being a factor, if one team is able to create 2 turnovers and not lose any, that team who created the 2 turnovers is more likely going to be your winner. So with that being said, Miami with Beck's interceptions, they're still +9 in the turnover margin, which says a lot. So that tells me that they've been able to get teams to turn the ball over, and Texas A&M
Right.
hasn't. So
Yep.
that's something to look at as well.
Yeah, it is. It is. Again, I like that third down stat though too. Though only giving up 22% of third downs defensively. So I just think that, and again, led the country in sacks, second nationally in tackles for loss. I just like the disruptiveness of A&M's defense too. But I agree with you. If either team were to win this turnover margin by 2, that team will win the game. In this game, it'll be impossible to overcome that a -2 in the turnover. You might be able to overcome a -1, but not a -2.
I agree.
Again, we talked about A&M's offensive line. I think their offensive line is very good, and I think they'll match up well. They won't dominate Miami's front by no means. I think they can hold them. I give the offensive line advantage in a big way to A&M over Miami's offensive line, and I think that'll play a big role in that. So I agree. This is one we still split on. You like Miami. I like Texas A&M playing at home. I think they're going to get a win this time. I don't know what week 2 will uphold for them, but I like them to get a win. The Colin Klein factor, though, is probably the one that would worry me the most if I was an A&M fan.
Yeah.
All right, so moving from there, let's go to Ole Miss and Tulane Saturday afternoon. That was the last one we don't even really have to talk about. But what's your thoughts on Miss Tulane?
Ole Miss
Other than the fact that
45,
Tulane shouldn't be playing.
Tulane 17. I really don't have a lot of thoughts on that game, either of the next 2 games. Honestly, I just don't see either team putting up a fight. We saw this game already, so this is a rematch, like Alabama Auburn, like Alabama Oklahoma, unlike Alabama Oklahoma, which was a great game. This game was a stinker, and I think it's going to be a stinker again. I don't think Tulane has anything for Ole Miss. They just don't have the Jimmies and Joes. I don't think there's much to talk about. You?
Well, I think Tulane is going to be competitive in this game. I think Ole Miss is going to win. I think Ole Miss will win by 10, might win by 13, 14. I do think Tulane keeps it within the spread, and I do think for a half to 2.5 quarters, it's going to be close. Tulane's defense really was successful when they got into December, and they were very good against North Texas. I realize North Texas is not Ole Miss, but defensive success rate, they were 6th in the country nationally, and they were number 1 in the havoc rate, and those numbers really got better in December. So I really like Tulane to make this game much more competitive than they did the first time. Now, that being said, it was like 45-10 or 42-10. So how could you not be more competitive than that? Again, I'm a full believer they shouldn't be in this game. I like Ole Miss to win. I think Chambliss has done a good job, and I think he'll continue to do a good job. I think a big part of this game is that offensive staff going back to help coach them in this game. I think if it wasn't for that, I don't think Tulane would win, but I think it could be a 4th quarter game. But with Charlie Weiss Jr. and that whole offensive staff back there to lead them in this game, I think Ole Miss wins this game. I'm going to say along the lines of 31-20 is what I would like it. I'm also going to say this. I just be honest. I think Pete Golding was a good defensive coordinator. I don't think he was elite by any means. Alabama was ready for him to leave. Let's just call it like it is. So I know Ole Miss thinks this is the best thing. He stabilized the roster. He said this. He did this. He said this to Lane. All this kind of emotional stuff. He's got to lead a defense now and be the head coach. And I think that's going to be a step down. I don't care what they say. They can say that this is an emotional game for Ole Miss. Those kids want to prove that they are good without Lane, all that kind of stuff. to me, that's going to force them to play tight. And if this game starts out competitive, I think it will stay competitive. And again, Pete Golding in a head coach position, if Lane Kiffin is an A, which most people believe he is, there is no way that Golding is better than a C. So I think that's another thing that keeps this game close is his ability to manage this game. I look for him to get caught up in the emotions, have a few bad judgment decisions as a coach, and I say that I wouldn't blame that. I mean, it's his first game in a big moment, so I don't even know that I would say that that's a bad thing. But to me, this is putting him in a bad spot, and I like if I was just looking at the coaching matchups, I like Summerall a lot better than Golding. If just that part. So, any
I,
thoughts there?
I agree with you there. But I just think that the talent factor is just so wide that the coaching's not going to have a lot to do with it. And listen, these guys, like I said, they've already played each other. Both staffs know what's going on with each other and all that. I think it's pretty much a repeat of the first game. Maybe not as big a margin of victory, but Ole Miss wins this one handily. That'll take us to James Madison heading to the West Coast to face Oregon. Another game that I really don't have a lot to say on because I don't think that I don't think James Madison has a snowball's chance in hell of being competitive in this game. The one we talked about it the other night. The one P4 team they did play this season beat them by what was it, 14? I think
14.
Yeah. So
14. Louisville beat them 28-20 or 28-14.
Yeah, so they lost to Louisville, who's a good team now. Louisville beat Miami when they were ranked. I think they were ranked number 1 or 2. Louisville's nothing to sneeze at. But if you're in the playoff, you shouldn't be losing to your toughest competition shouldn't be Louisville, and you shouldn't be losing that game. I think that Oregon will score as many as they want to and handle this. And it's going to be they're playing the JV. It's not a knock at James Madison. They had a great year. I think it's neat that they're involved. I wish that college football would come up with something for the group of 5 schools to have a separate playoff, because really it's two different it's two totally different setups. College basketball it is a little different than football, the way that it's structured and everything, and you don't need dozens of guys to create a competitive college basketball roster. If you got 2 studs on your team, that'll take you a long way in college basketball. And that's why you see a lot of these smaller schools in basketball going into the dance and doing big things. You're not going to see that in football because they don't, there's just too many bodies and it requires too much. They don't have the money. Like I said, it's unfair from the standpoint of, you can't expect a school like James Madison to be competitive with Oregon. I mean, Oregon probably spends more money on their uniforms than James Madison does in travel for a year. I mean, it's the money disparity is really that wide. So, I don't know. I don't like the game. Oregon's going to beat them by 50 plus. What do you do? I'm hopping off my soapbox. You can hop on.
Well, we're both on that soapbox because this game, this should not be a game. It's not being played. To kind of piggyback off your college basketball analogy, it's been proven in college basketball that you can take a team that's got a bunch of 4th year, 5th year seniors that have played together, and they can execute well together, and they can be competitive against the talent level of another team. You're talking 5 players on the court, the ability to spread the court. You take a good point guard that doesn't turn the ball over. It's just a totally different situation. Whereas again, the portal has taken the talent level on teams to another level that these Power 4 teams, you can't You can't match that. And when they're most talented guys on these non-power four teams, they end up transferring before the season. The talent disparity is huge, and you just can't. It's just different than basketball. You could take the team with the best execution, and again, just the geometry of it, the speed. You take a team with a bunch of 4, 5 guys on defense, they can shut a team down on offense. I don't care how good their execution level is, and it's been proven. That the top teams that have good defenses, they'll just swallow these teams up. Looking a little bit at the stats in that Louisville James Madison game that stand out to me, they allowed 6 sacks. James Madison did against Louisville. So there you go. Your offensive line is totally overmatched. Well, that is not going to be any better in this Oregon game, the Oregon's front. So how many are they going to get? 7, 8? Like we said the other night, as many as they want to. Kind of like how many points is Oregon going to score? As many as they want to. Fumbles lost, turnovers, 2 turnovers in that game, 12 penalties for 95 yards. And that's, James Madison is not a team that, is penalty prone. But again, you get in a matchup with the talent so much better on the other side. 3.4 yards per play, 7 yards of play is a goal. And they were half of that in that Louisville game. So, again, it just speaks to where you were overmatched. And, again, that's going to be the case. Again, I said I think something like 52-10 the other night. Wouldn't surprise me if it's 52-3. It'll be what Oregon wants it to be. I guess the question is Oregon going to leave their starters into the fourth quarter? Now, that being said, this game ends up close. I guess we'll be here next week and we'll be embarrassed to talk about it. But out of all the games that we've talked about and picked all year, I would bet an endless amount of money that this game is not close. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know what, we've eaten a lot of crow with our picks this season so far. So one more bite at that plate doesn't bother me at all. I just, if you're watching, participate, please call me out on these picks. I don't care. Oregon is not gonna. It's not gonna be close. It's not gonna be close. No. What's the spread in it?
So I was just looking. The Oregon's a 94% chance to win this game. I don't know how in the world James Madison could even be at 6. Spread is 21.
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
I would I'd sure lay 21. That means the halftime spread is going to be around 12 or 13. I'd sure lay that too.
Yeah, if I was a gambling man, I'd be all over it. For sure.
Over unders 47. Shit, Oregon might get that by themselves.
Yeah. I was gonna say I like Oregon in the over. We'll have to find out what DMAC thinks of these. Speaking of DMAC, wanted to mention, DMAC has a company called Bayou Apparel. They provide a lot of the shirts, hats, wear for LSU, and actually there are a lot of teams that they deal with nationally, but LSU being located in Baton Rouge is their biggest one. So they're coming up with a bunch of new designs on these Lane Train T-shirts. So be looking for those. We'll be showing them on the telecast here, different styles and stuff. Lane Train T-shirts and what they're doing there. And I'm also I've heard a rumor that my Lair Bears are supposed to be here this week. So if they arrive, the next show I will show one to you all. And if you guys want a Lair Bear, you can buy one. We'll make sure you get them. So be on the lookout for those Lane Train shirts though, because those are going to be a hoot.
We saw him today. He actually sent us a printout. He is working. They're making those shirts tonight, and they're going to be supplying some areas in Louisiana tomorrow. They've been waiting for weeks for Lane to approve the print, and right. He did. And it is a purple train running through the state of Louisiana. It's a good-looking T-shirt. Go and buy you apparel. Look at it. purchase it. It'll be well worth it. Be one of the first fans to have the Lane Train and be on the Lane Train. Again, big things are coming there. I think we're all excited about what he's going to
And
do. And
I get the sneak suspicion that we're also going to have some shirts that maybe have the little Southern Sports Gumbo logo with the Lane Train on there, and just mixing it up a little bit. Lane's going to be
Yep.
a big part of the show next year. Wait and see. You heard it here first. Yeah, that'll be a fun guest. That's one y'all want to tune into when Lane comes on the show for sure.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered quarterbacks, the playoffs. We are defensive player of the year. So I'm watching, the Georgia high school championships. Here's the interesting one: defensive player of the year in the state of Georgia for the Georgia Public Broadcasting is LSU commitment Deuce Gerald's. So that's an interesting one there. We're about to see a national championship game played in the 6A championship with Carrollton and Buford's about to kick off here in probably another 15, 20 minutes. But that's an interesting award for Deuce Gerald's, a big award there for a guy that's we've all got high hopes for. Top 100 guy, top 50 guy in some polls. Defensive player of the year in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, he I want to say I had read that he had broken the state record for sacks.
He definitely. I never saw a final, but it's likely that he did.
Which is insane because Georgia has had, we've had as much talent along the defensive lines as any state in the union. For Deuce to be able to do that in 6A Georgia football, like I said, it's not like he's playing against the Sisters of the Poor or playing 7-man football or something like that. If you're playing 6A Georgia football and you're starting, you can play a little ball. You can play a little ball, and if you're putting up numbers like that, then he's special. I said it a few weeks ago, and I think it was you that disagreed with me when we were talking about him and Anderson and Lamar Brown, and I said, don't be surprised if he ends up being the best of those three. I know Anderson is a freak, but this Gerald's kid, he's something. He gets to the ball. He has a nose for the ball. He gets to the ball, and hey, he can run the ball too.
Yeah. So no, actually, so let me say what I meant when I said. So if I go back to when I saw him at the Under Armour camp a year and a half ago, our friend Billy, who runs the SMU site, and I sent him a note right then that this kid is good, and he's very athletic, and so he's a little bit undersized from what a typical D tackle is, but he is incredibly athletic and strong. And so no, I'm very high on him. I think he's going to be very good. And he did break the Georgia record. Ended up with 51 total sacks. So you break that out, that's a hell of a number. Now, again, if I compare him to Anderson, no, I don't think he's as good a player as Anderson. But that being said, I think Anderson's the best defensive tackle to sign with LSU since Glenn Dorsey. That's just my opinion. So that's not a knock on Deuce Gerald. I think that's just. I think Anderson is that good, but
I hope he lives up to the
think
hype.
I think if you put Gerald's, Lamar Brown, Richard Anderson, it's the best defensive line class LSU's had in a long time since that 2003, 4, 2005 time frame when Saban was bringing in lines.
This
every
isn't
year.
hyperbole. This might be one of the best defensive line classes anybody's ever brought in. When we look back at it, if all three of these kids do live up to their abilities, because like I said, Gerald's is the lowest ranked of the three, and it's pretty strong. Pretty strong when you're saying the lowest ranked of the three is the Georgia State all-time sack leader. So. He ain't no punk. He's playing against some grown men when he's getting these sacks. So be very interested to see. We've had some decent linemen. Mason Smith, 4 or 5 years ago was another one who was he got injured early. So hopefully these kids will stay healthy and we'll see what they got to offer.
And you also got to add in there Trent Henderson from Florida. who's a top 100 defensive lineman at defensive end. So I mean, really, if you break that line across the front, let's say 3 years from now, you could have Henderson at one defensive end position, Lamar Brown. Henderson would be your weak side defensive end, or LeBrown would be your strong side defensive end. And then in the center of that, you could have Anderson and Gerald's. Um, that's a pretty stout defensive line.
Yeah.
And that's a good heck of a mix between athleticism, strength, physicality. You would have Gerald's and Henderson with their athleticism. Brown, who's a freak athlete for his size, but he's going to bring more physicality along with Anderson. That would be that's a lot. That's a lot to look forward to.
Certainly is.
So, well, to me that wraps it up. I don't really have anything else other than I'm looking forward to watching this game between Buford and Carrollton. If you have Georgia Public Broadcasting, or you can sign on to your internet and stream the game, it's going to be one worth watching. Again, you're going to have a national championship winner out of this game. One of these teams will be considered a national champion, whether it's Max Prep or USA Today. So that's all I've got. Sweet, you got anything else before we close it up?
No. If you want to watch good football, I implore you to watch this game tonight and tomorrow night as well with Gainesville and who are they playing?
Thomas
County Central.
Thomas County.
Central.
You've been on them.
That's going to be a heck of a game too. Like, follow, subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell your neighbor, tell the checkout man at the Publix, tell everybody. Watch Southern Sports Gumbo. Come join us. Jump in. Participate in the show. We're going to start having live guests on here shortly, so that'll give you guys some more opportunities to be a part of the show. So we're looking forward to that and hope you stick with us. Thanks for your time.
Yep, and if you disagree, put it in the comments. Everyone have a great
25 years. I'm used to being disagreed with and wrong, so
That's
jump
right.
on it. It's okay. It's